Hi everyone, meteorologist Joel Curtis with your Alaska Weather TV show. Starting out with our warnings and watches and advisories, we have a blizzard warning for the St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait until about Saturday night, and it's long term because there's going to be quite a southerly flow coming up, and the storm track is up through the Bering Strait later this weekend. For winter weather advisories, we have the Chukchi Sea, Baldwin Peninsula, Selawik Valley, North and Interior Seward Peninsula, and those are lasting through at least this evening, and then more warnings to come. So, looking at our satellite image, we've got a couple of systems, one entering the far western Bering Sea, the other one weakening and moving over to about to the Pribilof Islands, and then we also have quite a lot of showers in the Gulf. The old low is still somewhere roughly off of Icy Bay, and there is quite a circulation around that and some precipitation with that as you look up into the interior. And so, looking at today's weather, there's that 997 millibar low just into the Bering Sea that is rapidly moving toward the southeast and will dissipate with time. Also, you can see the 980 millibar low off of Icy Bay, and a little bit of onshore flow causing precipitation for southeast Alaska. It's still really cold air, so it's making sure that there's it's in the form of snow and not rain. And then there's our new system entering in out for the Bering Sea, coming. And then for tonight's weather, that system deepens to 989 millibars. Quite a strong warm front that is going along with that. That's about as strong a warm front as you ever see. And lots of snow out in front of it. We also have areas of snow and blowing snow for the Chugach Mountains, also for west side of Cook Inlet and for Kodiak Island, with that circulation around our low pressure system, 991 millibars in the Gulf, and the front again is weak, and it's not really moving onshore because this system is moving toward the southeast, and on Friday it's going to be 995 millibars off of Haida Gwaii. Still a little bit of onshore flow for the southern part of the Panhandle, but basically look at all of that non-precipitation area for the mainland portion of the state. Still areas of blowing snow for the Chugach Mountains, also Wrangell St. Elias, down through western Cook Inlet, and also for Kodiak Island. And there's our strong warm front right there, coming on up to the Bering Strait. This is a really strong system. We're expecting a lot of that southerly flow, precipitation and blowing snow coming along with that. And by Saturday, man, that front moves all the way up into the Chukchi Sea. And so lots of snow and blowing snow behind that front, some mixed precipitation and still out in the Bering Sea with some rain, and then snow showers out behind it. And then over on the other side, we've got one area blowing snow for the Wrangell St. Elias Mountains, and that's about it because that low has drifted off toward Seattle. So, look at our low temperatures Friday morning in the 20s and lower 30s for southeast, single digits for south central, including -2 for the Copper River Basin, and 4 for Anchorage, -1 for Kenai, and 12 as you get down to Homer. And then looking for Friday afternoon, we've got temperatures in the mid-30s all the way up to 39 for the Panhandle, but still really cold temperatures in the teens for most of south central. Central, 29 for Valdez, and we've got about 28 for Kodiak Island. And then looking for our low temperatures Saturday morning in the 20s and even in the teens as you get in the North Panhandle, 16 for Yakutat, minus 18 for the Copper River Basin, minus 2 for Anchorage, minus 4 for Kenai, and warmer as you get toward those oceanic areas. And then for Saturday afternoon, our highs in the mid-30s all the way up to 39 for Ketchikan, and then 6 for the Copper River Basin, 12 for Anchorage, 16 for Kenai, and looking at our north slope now, minus 20s for our lows on Friday morning, and then still minus 20s as you get down in the interior, minus 13 for Fairbanks, minus 16 for Nome, and then for Friday afternoon, we can still see minus teens all along the north slope, down into the single digits as you get further south, minus 1 for Nome, and then Saturday morning, cold again, minus 20s all along the north slope, maybe a few minus teens as you get out toward the Chukchi Sea, minus 20 still in the interior, the northeastern interior, minus 19 for Fairbanks, minus 9 for Nome, and then for Saturday afternoon, things warming up to the negative single digits along the Chukchi Sea, and then minus 7 for Fort Yukon, plus 4 for Fairbanks, and plus 9 for Nome, with that southerly flow now starting to kick in. For Friday morning, again, for Southwest, minus teens down to minus 20, but as you go out the peninsula, again, in the 20s and lower 30s, 20 for the Pribilofs, and then things start to warm up in the southern portions. 40 for, let's say, Adak, and 33 for Coal Bay. Plus 10 for, is still cold for King Salmon, 34 for the Pribilofs. And then as we get on Saturday morning, those lows are still in the mid-30s and down to the mid-20s as you get further up the peninsula, minus 3 for Bethel, so it's still staying cold there, even though that warm air is starting to ride over top of them, and 31 for the Pribilofs, and then look at those high temperatures on Saturday afternoon. Now we're starting to see in the upper 20s and lower 30s in the southwest, still in the teens for King Salmon, and then in the 40s as you get out into the Pribilofs. So let's take a couple of minutes and look here at the 6 to 10 day and 8 to 14 day outlooks. So for March 8th through March 12th, it is a pretty good likelihood that we're going to see above normal temperatures all for the west coast and the northwest. And then as you get over into the eastern portions of the state, it starts becoming normal, and then pretty good chance that the panhandle is going to be below normal for that time. And then when we look at our 6 to 10 day precipitation, March 8th through March 14th, it looks like above normal precipitation, some chance of it for the northern sections, normal through the interior, but look at that below normal for southwestern Alaska, the Alaska Peninsula, and then all the way over to Yakutat, and a pretty good likelihood that it's going to be below normal precipitation as you get over to the Panhandle. And then we're going to look at 8 to 14, March 10th through March 16th. The northwestern part, some chance that it's going to be above normal temperatures. And then for much of the mainland parts of the state, it looks like it's going to be about normal temperatures or so. But as you get into the southeast, you start seeing below normal temperatures for Fairbanks and Anchorage. And then as you get into Northway, a little bit better, more confidence that it's going to be below normal. And then finally, as you get down to the Panhandle, pretty good chance it's going to be below normal all the way from Yakutat to Ketchikan. And then for our 8 to 14 day precipitation, March 10th through March 16th, we're looking at for southwestern Alaska, pretty darn good chance that it's going to be a below normal precipitation. And then even up to Nome, there's at least some chance that there's going to be, and also for Kodiak Island. And then as we look up at the north slope, one section of the north slope has a slight edge that it might be above normal precipitation in that area. But then as you go for most of the state, it's normal, and then for southeast Alaska, above normal. So lots of active weather. Its weather is moving around the chessboard pretty fast, and please stay safe out there.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
And now for your aviation forecast. Starting out with our flying weather Friday morning, we've got some IFR over the Bering Sea associated with that system that's moving up toward the north. We also have some IFR over the central interior down to the Alcan border, roughly around the upper Tanana region. And then also we have some IFR on the northeastern Gulf Coast, and that is also for the northern panhandle, and lots of marginal VFR out of the Gulf and also the eastern Bering Sea. And then looking ahead at Friday afternoon, IFR along the Brooks Range and into the Kotzebue area, also a little bit south of the Yukon River in the interior. All of the coastline of the Panhandle and the interior channels in the Panhandle also will have IFR. And then looking at our Friday afternoon into the Bering Sea, it includes the Pribilof, St. Matthew Island, and the western and central Aleutians. And then for Saturday morning, a good area of IFR moves up to St. Lawrence Island, also the southwest coast, including Hooper Bay, and almost to the Nome area, with lots of marginal VFR out there and a whole new slug of IFR out in the western Bering Sea. And then also marginal VFR in southeast Alaska and all along the eastern Alcan. And then for Saturday afternoon, extensive IFR all along the west coast, and that's with that warm advection lifting that air up and causing those water droplets to really help all the way down to the surface, get some lower conditions, a little bit of marginal VFR out over the Gulf of Alaska. So looking at our passes on Friday, Anatuvik, marginal VFR becoming IFR, Adigan Pass, marginal VFR, Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, both VFR, Rainy Pass, VFR becoming marginal VFR, Windy Pass, IFR becoming marginal VFR, Isabel Pass, IFR becoming marginal VFR, Mentassa Pass, IFR becoming marginal VFR, Tahita Pass, VFR, Portage Pass, VFR, Chilkoot and White Pass, both IFR. And now looking at our freezing levels, that freezing level line is really down low, right through Dixon Entrance, out into the Gulf, Dutch Harbor just a little bit above freezing, and then take a look at that slug of warm air that's coming out into the western Aleutians surface, raising up to 6,000 feet. For our icing on Friday, an area of considerable moderate all across the Bering Sea, out ahead of the glide of that air up over the warm front associated with that Bering Sea system. Roughly that whole area is going to be about 4,000 to 10,000 feet. And then looking at the Gulf of Alaska and on over into the Panhandle, Dixon Entrance, considerable moderate, and then a little bit offshore south of Icy Bay. Otherwise, isolated moderate, all 2,000 to 10,000 feet, with the remnants of that system moving toward the southeast. And for our jet stream, very what we call in meteorology anticyclonic, with a big upper ridge showing 155 knots as finally as you get down to the Gulf, all northwesterlies, and then into the Bering Sea you can see that southwest kicking in, and that's driving that system up in there. And then for 9,000-foot winds, 90 knots out in the western Bering Sea, dropping off to 70 knots as it curves on the upper level ridge, and then comes down to 70 knots, not a whole lot over the mainland. And then for our 3,000-foot winds, again, not a whole lot over the mainland. Outflow winds, 50 to 60 knots coming out in the Gulf. And then for our southeast Alaska, with that upper low, there's not a whole lot of circulation around that. And so looking at our turbulence on Friday, so we've got quite an area extending all the way up to the eastern end of Kotzebue Sound, down across Cook Inlet for Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, Lake Clark area, all of Bristol Bay, and then on out into the Aleutians. And an area of actually isolated severe just west of Kodiak Island and on the Alaska Peninsula. Surface to 4,000 feet in southwestern, surface to 6,000 feet as you get a little bit further east, and then surface to 3,000 feet out the Aleutians. So there's still a lot of weather out there with these systems decreasing. Stay safe out there. Fly safe.
Hello, jovial Jovians. I'm Trace, and this week Venus and Jupiter will form a conjunction. Venus has no moons, but Jupiter has at least 80. The four biggest, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, are known as the Galilean moons. How did I remember all those moons? I've got a mnemonic, so let's find Jupiter in the sky, and I'll explain. Hit the darkness at 6:30 p.m. any night this week and face west. One of the brightest objects you'll see is Jupiter, and then under it is another bright dot. That's the planet Venus. On Wednesday, they'll be so close together, it'll be hard to tell them apart. What a conjunction! Okay, back to the Jovian moons. You can remember Jupiter's four largest moons in orbital order simply using the catchy phrase, I eat green caterpillars. I for Io, eat for Europa, green for Ganymede, and caterpillars for Callisto. Just remember, I eat green caterpillars, and impress your friends. Keep looking up.
Hi everyone, my name is Tim Steffen. I'm the Marine Program Manager with the National Weather Service in Alaska region, and I'm here today to talk about exciting marine zone changes which are set to be implemented on March 8th, 2023 across the state of Alaska. Why is the National Weather Service making these marine zone changes? We're looking to provide more specific marine weather information that better represents a given location and improves the accuracy of National Weather Service forecast, watch, warning, and advisory products. The main change we are making with marine zones is adding a new nearshore forecast zone, which will cover the coastline out to 15 nautical miles. There'll be an additional coastal zone, which will run from 15 nautical miles out up to 100 nautical miles. Along with that main change, we're also making additional changes in the eastern Gulf of Alaska, Prince William Sound, the Aleutians, and the eastern Bering Sea. Due to the extent of these changes, most marine forecast zone names and numbers will change across the state of Alaska. Here's a look at the old forecast zones on the left compared to the new ones, which will be implemented on March 8th, 2023. The old zones had a coastal forecast zone, which ran from the coastline up to 100 nautical miles from the coast, with an offshore zone, which ran from 100 nautical miles to several hundred nautical miles from the coast. The new zones will have the near shore forecast zone from the coastline to 15 nautical miles out, colored in yellow there on the map, with a second coastal zone running from 15 nautical miles up to 100 nautical miles from the coast. Additionally, offshore forecast zones will run from 100 nautical miles to several hundred nautical miles from the coast. Let's take a more zoomed in look across the state at some of these changes. We'll start in the Gulf of Alaska. The offshore zone in the Gulf of Alaska will be split, in the eastern Gulf of Alaska will be split into two. Seen on the map there is PKZ 311 and PKZ 312. An important note for mariners in southeast Alaska is that marine forecast zone names, numbers, and boundaries of the inner channels will not change. As we head west into Prince William Sound, the main part of the sound, which used to be one forecast zone, will now be split into three smaller forecast zones. Users in the Cook Inlet area will note that marine zone numbers will change, however, the boundaries will not. Looking at the Aleutians, you will see the near shore forecast zone in yellow running out 15 nautical miles from the coast in yellow. The coastal zone will run from 15 nautical miles up to 100 nautical miles. And you should also note the Pribilof Islands will now have a nearshore zone running from the islands out 15 nautical miles. Heading north into the eastern Bering Sea, you will see in yellow the nearshore zone continuing to run along the coast of the state. We have additionally added a nearshore zone around St. Lawrence Island. And you will also note that the large coastal zone that surrounded St. Lawrence Island has now been broken into 4 smaller forecast areas. Noted on the map is PKZ 850, 851, 853, and 854. Heading further north to the Arctic coast, the main change here you will note is the nearshore zone addition from 0 to 15 nautical miles from the coast. The zone names and numbers of the nearshore and coastal zones will change. However, you will also note the offshore zones labeled PKZ 500, 505, and 510 will not change. To recap, with the extensive changes being made across the entire state to National Weather Service marine zone boundaries, the names and numbers of these zones will change in most areas. Please familiarize yourself with these changes for the Alaskan waters you navigate and the forecasts you use. The National Weather Service in Alaska has created a webpage specifically for these changes. You can visit this webpage at weather.gov/ARH, which stands for Alaska Region Headquarters /Marine. What you will find on this webpage is more detailed information on the changes, including why they were made and what we are looking to achieve with the changes. You will see an official press release from the National Weather Service, as well as important information regarding NOAA Weather Radio listeners. For NOAA Weather Radio listeners using receivers equipped with specific area message encoding, otherwise known as SAME, these listeners will need to add new SAME locations to their receivers prior to March 8, 2023. This is a critical requirement in order to continue receiving automated notifications of special marine warnings. The new SAME location codes can be found on a link on this webpage. Additionally, on the webpage, you'll find several maps, both statewide and of several zoomed-in areas around the state in color and black and white. For higher bandwidth users, you will find links to a GIS map and a story map for additional details on the changes. Points of contact for these changes are myself, Tim Steffen, the Marine Program Manager at Alaska Region Headquarters, as well as my colleague Lindsay Tarduff-Huber, Warning Coordination Meteorologist for Alaska Region. Our email and phone information is on the screen. Thank you for listening today, and we look forward to hearing your feedback on these changes. Safe navigating.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, and now for your marine forecast. Starting out with today's sea ice edge, we're going to expect some retreat when the wind turns around to southerly in the next couple of days of the main ice edge. And then the thing that we're thinking about for the next forecast cycle is the potential for maybe some overflow in those areas where we have really, really thin ice, and we have also maybe some open leads. And the reason we're thinking this is we're just about to the full moon, and also we have these southerly winds and a bit of a warm-up. For the marine forecast for southeast Alaska on Friday, on the outside waters, responding to the still at Gulf low, 15 to 30 knots, and seas up to 17 feet. And then for the inside waters, northerlies 25 knots, seas 4 feet for Lynn Canal, otherwise 10 to 20 knots on the inside, seas up to 9 feet and Clarence Strait. And then for Saturday's marine forecast, again, now all offshore flow, 25 to 30 knots in most areas, seas up to 15 feet, most of that is a southwest swell, and then northerlies 30 knots in Lynn Canal, seas 6 feet, and then 15 to 20 knots elsewhere. For south central waters, responding to the low, again, northerlies and northwesterlies, 30 gusts to 45 off of Cape Sapling. For Prince William Sound, 30 knots, seas 6 feet. And then coming out of Kennedy Entrance, 55 knots near Augustine, 50 knots out further outside, seas up to 18 feet, and 15 to 25 knots over the ice. For Saturday's marine forecast, again, northerlies now, responding to that low that's moved way to the southeast, 25 to 40 knots on the outside, 25 knots in Prince William Sound, seas 4 feet, 15 to 20 over the ice, and 30 knots near Augustine, seas 6 feet. For the peninsula and Kodiak, northwesterlies on Friday, 50 knots on the outside off of Kodiak Island, gusts higher 55 in Chillicothe Strait, 35 to 40 knots elsewhere on the Bering Sea side, 25 to 30 knots, seas up to 14 feet. And then for Saturday, we've got offshore flow, again, 25 knots in Chillicothe Strait, 30 to 35 knots in the outside, wind responding in direction to that low in the Bering Sea now, seas up to 17 feet, and then on the Bering side, 25 to 40 knots, seas up to 10 feet. For the Aleutian chain, we've got a lot of southerlies kicking in, particularly in the west on Friday, wind up to 45 knots, seas up to 21 feet. Otherwise, a big range of wind, 20 to 30 knots, and seas up to 12 feet on the Pacific side, up to 12 feet, 14 feet on the Bering Sea side. And then for Saturday, we've got southerlies in the eastern and central Aleutians, 40 to 45 knots, seas up to 25 feet on the Pacific side, 22 feet on the Bering Sea side, and then kicking in a little bit of westerly, 25 to 30 knots in the western Aleutians. For over the ice on the west coast on Friday, we've got 10 ramping up to 25 knots out over the open waters, 25 knot westerlies for the Pribilos, otherwise southeasterlies 45 with seas 13 feet near St. Matthew. And then for Saturday, everybody kicks into south, 30 to 40 knots over the ice, 40 to 45 knots over the open water, seas up to 21 feet. And then for the Arctic coastline on Friday, we've got easterlies generally 10 knots on the north slope, but 10 ramping up to 25 knots down on the Bering Strait. And then on Saturday, we have southeasterlies just about everywhere, 15 to 25 knots on the north slope, 40 knots through the Bering Strait. So a last look at our tonight's weather, that low weakening in the Gulf and starting to move toward the southeast, moves well into the southeast on Friday with a main low going to the Gulf of Anadyr 981 and a very, very strong warm front moving up in the Bering Sea. And then on Saturday, that warm front really, really develops, moves all the way up into the Arctic, areas of snow and blowing snow and pretty strong winds all along the west coast and Bering Sea. And then that low has moved well to the southeast, 995 millibars from the Panhandle, and a lot of offshore flow there. So thanks for tuning in, and please stay safe out there and stay in touch with your local forecasts.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.